Okay, so tonight's demo, different palm trees. So I went out and looked up palm trees that I've done in the past, our standard palm tree, but there's lots of others out there that I think are very pretty, and I wanted to share with you some of those. So what I'm going to do tonight when I switch to the demo is I'm going to share how to do some of the different trunk styles and some of the different frond styles, okay, the colors and the strokes. And then I'll put one together and just kind of explain to you how they all seem to kind of sprout out the top, okay? So what I want to share with you is first, like I said, I'm going to show you how to stroke a basic palm tree trunk. There's a couple of different methods and looks for these. So here I'm putting out burnt umber, some coffee latte. Oops, let's put it out that way. There we go. I'm going to get some wicker white. There we go. All right, so those are our basic trunk colors, and you can use some burnt sienna, different shades of brown. Actually, let me put a little bit of burnt sienna out because that is a fairly common color. There we go. Okay, and then for our frond colors, I have several different colors out here that I want to share with, but we're going to start with some sap green, and I'm going to put out some aqua. That always makes a very pretty accent color on palm trees. We're going to put out some citrus green, getting out all the colors today, and some daffodil yellow. There we go. And I'm putting out a couple of the colors. Now this one I'm told is discontinued. This is greenscape, okay? But when it comes to doing some of the Bismarck palm fronds, that color is perfect. But I'm going to share with you how we can get that color with some of our other colors since they don't make greenscape anymore. I'm going to do my best to get as close to that color as I can. So I put out some medium gray, and I'm going to put out some magenta here next to my aqua because that makes for a pretty accent color too. So I think I got all the colors out here that I want. There's a lot. And then I've got floating medium if I need it. I'm going to put just a little bit of that over here by my trunk colors, okay? So I'm going to get a 12 flat. Okay, so I'm double loading a 12 flat here with burnt umber and coffee latte, okay? Just a basic brown trunk color. Get a little medium and a lot of color, okay? Now, we're going to come down here and create a couple of trunks, shapes, and styles. And while I'm doing that, I want to turn on my iPad so that I can see my palm tree pictures. Okay, so palm trees can have a couple of different, well, many different looks of trunks. They can be long and skinny, short and squat. Basically, you're looking at starting with a base of straight, flat, like this, and then it goes up and gets narrow, okay? Now, you don't necessarily have to take it to a point at the top. It really doesn't matter because when you start adding the fronds, then it will be not quite so visible, okay? So you start with a basic slender, smooth stroke, and then there's a couple of different things you can do. You can come in here and side load a little bit of white, and to get some of those trunks on, let's say, for example, the Bismarck palms or the date palms where they have the crisscrossed, there's a fan palms do the same thing, where they have kind of a crisscrossed layer on the outside of the trunk where the fronds have been clipped off, okay? Then you're going to have little short crisscrosses like this coming down, and sometimes they sway out or curve out, and sometimes they're flat, okay? But you're going to push and pull it in all the way across, Okay, maybe not quite so white on that outside. So you're starting on the chisel. If you can see this, you're on the chisel, you're going to push slightly so that you square off that outside end, and you're going to pull it in. Okay, and they crisscross over each other down the face of the trunk. See that? Okay. All right, so you might have that going on, but they crisscross way over, and remember you're side loading a little bit of white, and then you want to have some that crisscross closer in the front, right? And you're working your way down like that, okay? So you're at different angles, and you want them fairly squared off because they get cut, so they're straight on that outside edge. Okay. Get that light side stroke on the outside. Whoops, don't want it too white. Okay, so you might have a trunk that looks like that, and usually it's much more uniform coming down like that. The groomers or the landscapers are usually really good about creating a nice cut. Okay, and then you would have the fronds coming out the top, and so when I get to that point I will share that with you. Okay, so finishing that off, that's one trunk style. So left and right, and then one or two in the middle. Okay, so then I'm doing palm trees from my region. There's these palm trees are all over in Florida, guys. They bring them in different varieties, but you would see these palm trees in many of the tropical locations, including Florida. All right, so these are just from fan palms. Then you have a date palm. Now the date palm has a trunk that's more of an hourglass shape like this. Okay, so then once you get the shape, then you can come, oops, get more color. Starving my brush, I don't want to do that. There we go. So it's wider at the top and bottom and narrow in the middle, okay? And then you would have, let's side load a little bit of white, and maybe you have a lighter side on this side here where the sun is shining. This side maybe not quite so. And then you would have it coming out of the ground, right? So maybe it's right here, like that. Okay, so then at the top, they have kind of a little section where the fronds come out. Now they've come out all the way up as it builds, but for some reason, it kind of is larger at this top area of the trunk. Okay, so it looks a little bit like this. And then you would come in with a smaller brush, let's say a 6 flat. Okay. And you might get, let's see, it needs to be a lighter color, so you might get coffee latte in there and then some white. Blend that together. And they're little slash marks like this, where they've cut off the frond. Okay, so while that paint is wet, you're going to come and create these little marks. They're just little touches of color, following the shape of this round bulge at the top of the tree. Okay, and maybe you have a little bit of dark in here in between. You might bring that in with a script liner if it makes more sense, but Just a little bit of this burnt umber coming in to give it some depth, okay? And then come back in with this. And then all down the face of the trunk, you still have these little marks. So you could come little slashes. Let me get a little bit of burnt umber in there. Where they cut off. These have very thick stemmed fronds. So this is a date palm. This is about as close as I can get, Angela. Might have to open it full screen on your device. I'm as close up as my camera can get without bumping into it. Okay, so you're just doing little slash marks with the chisel edge of this 6 flat. Just creating a little texture going up this trunk. Okay, and then the fronds come out the top from this position up here. Okay. All right, so that's what a date palm trunk looks like. Now, one of my favorite palm trees that you don't see too many of, they're kind of a hybrid for this area. They bring them into Florida. I don't believe they're native to Florida, but this is called a Bismarck palm, and they have these very kind of grayish green fan palms on them. But so they have a trunk that's, again, short, and it fans out at the bottom. So it's kind of narrow here and gets wider at the bottom. And there's a little bit of gray tone to it as well. So I'm going to pick up just a little bit of medium gray. And what you can do with this, because it looks like it's kind of wrapped around the outer bark, looks wrapped around the trunk. You can kind of, on the chisel edge with that gray, and I picked up a little bit of white. Right, you can just sweep on the chisel edge around like that, so you give it more of a turned look. The bark is kind of spun around the outside edge. It's, at least the picture that I'm looking at looks that way. Okay, so I've got bits of medium gray, I've got wicker white, coffee latte, and burnt umber on my brush, and you're just kind of sweeping that up like that. Okay, and then it comes down to the ground. All these palm trees do this. When they come to the base on the ground, they kind of curve in like that. See that? So it's not that defined. I just wanted you to see. So you curve it in. There we go. Like this. And then the roots go out. And they have very shallow roots, which is why you see them tip over when the hurricanes come. But they're also very flexible. Okay, so that's what these main palms look like. Their trunks look like this. Okay, now I'm going to come in and get a little bit of burnt sienna here and add a few strokes into the trunk of this now that this is dry, so that it looks a little more realistic. There we go. So I'm just side stroking a little burnt sienna on my brush and bringing that in. And you can get a little bit of burnt umber here, kind of darken in between, pull the burnt sienna down. There we go. Okay. Just pulling little streaks of burnt umber out. So that gives it a little more authentic look. Okay, so hi, Miss Donna. Thanks for joining. All right, so those are basic trunks of different types of palms. And then the last one is our standard palm tree. And there's a couple of different ways you can do this. This would be your kind of sable palm trunk, or coconut palms where they're fairly curved and flat. And so, not curved and flat, what's the word I'm looking for? They're curved and thin. Okay, so I've got the browns on here, a little bit of white, some floating medium, and I'm going to share with you that trunk. So let me pop up here, and we're just going to, now there's a couple different ways. If you're doing the one stroke method, then you can stroke that palm in segments. So we push, stand up and lift, all right? No, I'm doing it backwards. You push, stand up and lift this way. Now I got Miss Donna watching me, I'm flustered. All right, and then you overlap, push and lift, and you create this kind of segmented looking simple palm tree trunk like that. And you get narrower and more angled to the top when you get up to the top. Now you can do it more in a flat version where you're just pushing on the flat of the brush, and you don't want to make it too wide, okay? Need more paint. You're going to push, slide, and stand up. And these can go straight up, or they can have a slight curve. A lot of times they're curving over around something or whatever. Whoops, get there, okay? And again, you don't have to be too concerned about the top, because that's where we're going to add all our fronds, and you're not really going to see that much of it. So, and in this case, then you can decide, like I like to come in on my palm trees. What am I painting? Palm trees. And I will do a little, just like we did down here with that kind of curved, I will do just a little curve, but more of a flat curve going up to get some texture. Because these palm trees get real kind of beat up with the winds, and they have lots of different color tones to them. You can grab a little bit of the medium gray even and bring that in, because they start to look a little bit like concrete over time. Okay, and so you don't want it to look too stripy, so it's a good idea to kind of overlap some of those in between those original stripes. All right, so it's not looking too pretty yet. I want that to dry a little bit, and then I'm going to share with you a little trick you can do with some shading. Okay. I think that's pretty dry. So I clean my brush out. I'm going to get some floating medium, and I'm going to come side load some burnt umber. It's not a real trick, but it's just a technique that I like to do. So while this is dry, and I can shade along, float that brown down the edge, and now you'll get a little more depth and dimension with that trunk. See that? Then you can wipe off, grab the same colors, grab floating medium and side load the coffee latte and a little bit of white. Okay, and then you can come from up here and float that down the opposite side for your light accent color. And this will make your tree look more round when it's got the light and dark shading on both sides. See how that rounded that right out? Okay, and then you can just have fun with these trees. You can do little streaks of color, some of that brown, and I think it just gives it a little more of a peaceful look. Okay, so those are the different trunks, and there's lots more. So I encourage you to take a look at the varieties of palm trees that you can see out on websites out there. You can look on Pinterest. I'm just seeing if there's another trunk. I mean, there's lots and lots of skinny ones, but they all have different varieties. And then of course we have our coconut palms and our royal palms, etc. Okay, again, straight, and then you have the stripes going around. Okay, so let's look at our palm fronds. Okay, so let's talk about first our basic palm frond. I'm going to use my feather brush or rake brush here, and I've got it damp on paper towel, or damp in water, laid it on the paper towel. And I'm going to pick up, need a little bit more water on there because you don't want to take all the water out on the paper towel. Picking up some sap green on one side, on the flat of the brush. Flip the brush over and grab some citrus green, okay? So I've got a good amount of paint on this brush. And so these are the trunks, okay? Now, before I go adding, well, no, I'll just add them here. That's fine. So when you're adding, let's say, our basic palm frond to something like a coconut palm or or a date palm for that matter, you're going to start up here at the top. Let me do it on this one because that's too high for that one. You're going to start up here at the top and you're going to pull like umbrella stems coming from the top of the tree. Okay, down like that. And you're on the chisel edge of the brush. Okay, now you're going to pick up the same colors on both sides of the flat, and let's start from the back. So on the back, now you can use a fan brush or the rake brush. I like the rake brush personally a little bit better because I have a little bit better control. It's not quite so big. So you're going to touch on that chisel edge on the stem of the frond, and you're going to streak up and lift as you do. Okay, so you're going to create a really pretty look to that stroke. And then opposite side, do the same thing, and you get more vertical as you get to the top. Okay, now I can pick up little bits of white. I like to pick up aqua sometimes, aqua on the chisel edge, and you're going to come from here. See how pretty that is? Brightens it right up. Let's come down so you can see it a little better. There we go. So don't make them look flat by putting exact same strokes on each side. Follow the curve of the frond, and on this side they're going to be more flat towards the frond center, the stem, and on this side they're going to be more curving over towards you. See that? And they get smaller and shorter as you get to the point, to the tip of the frond. They're wider back here and narrower up here. Now you can do a couple of things to lighten that up. You can grab a little bit of yellow or white and you can blend it, or you can lay it right on top. Okay, then you can come in and get your stem color again and lay that in there. Now that's one way of doing that frond. Let me wipe this off just a little bit. I got a little carried away here. Now you can get on the chisel edge of this brush and you can do more of a chisel stroke like that. Okay, and then you would do each one individually coming from the stem, following the same curve, getting shorter as you come to the end. All right, so that's another way to do it. And then you grab your lighter color. And again, it's on the left side of the stem and centered towards you. It's going to be more of a flat stroke, and this one's going to be more of laying down. See that? All right, so that's another way to do it. The third way to do it would be, let me get my two colors again. So if this were the frond itself right here, and you had leaves coming from both sides, and this is standing up, right? So the leaves are folding down on both sides. The stem is the highest point. So you would do the back leaves on the chisel edge, or you could do them with the rake brush like I just showed you the other way, right? And you pull those down like that. And those are going to be longer. I should have made them just a little bit longer. There we go. Now I'm going to come in with my lighter color, maybe get just a little bit of white on that chisel edge of the brush. And we're going to come from that same edge of the stem, but we're going to slightly overlap, and they're going to go a little bit different angle. Now that white's just a little too much. Let me come and get some citrus with that and work that in. So I'm grabbing citrus green and then white and working it in on my brush, okay? So let's come in here and we'll redo these. Now notice, like I said, we're going at a slightly different angle and they're a little bit shorter. And now you're seeing front and back with the leaves of the palm frond hanging down. Maybe get a little bit of yellow with that. Okay, and then the last thing you would do is restroke that palm frond stem going across the top. All right, so you see the back of the leaves in the back on the folded side, and then in the front on the front folded side, and then the stem gets restroked. Okay, so then you can finish those palm fronds any way you like. If you prefer the method where they're on the flat of the brush with the rake brush like this, right? So it comes out wider and narrower to the tip, and then you would come in, maybe grab your lighter colors again, get some yellow with that citrus green, and maybe a little bit of white. You gotta help that pop in front of there. Like that. So now you're seeing again the front and the back and the layers, and then you come back in with a little bit of sap and restroke that center. Okay, so you've got 1, 2, 3, 4 different ways of doing these palm fronds, and then you would finish with this one in the front. Okay, now I like to do one last thing when I'm doing palms so that it looks a little more realistic, and that is because you're facing it and the perspective would be that a palm frond would be coming towards you this way, but you wouldn't see it attached to the palm tree trunk. All you would see is the bend point from the perspective, and then the stem coming forward like this. So can you see that? I'm going to do that in a light color just so you can see it. So you'd have the bend point here and then the stem coming forward like that, right? So what you want to do in that case is you're going to stroke. Let me get a little bit of, let me get some aqua in here so you can see that pretty well. All right, so you're going to stroke from the stem right here and pull it to the left, getting narrower and standing up to the tip like that. And then on this side, you're going to pull it to the right and then getting closer and more straight and narrow to the tip right there. Okay, so you're seeing it kind of bend right here, and you don't see what's behind, and it comes up above the center of the tree trunk. Okay, so it looks like it's falling over. So I hope that's coming across to you that way. Getting a few different colors to try and help that pop out. Okay, and so once that's done, let me get some more green here. All right, let me wipe off. I'm going to get a little bit of white here. Oops, that's a lot of white. Let's work that in. There we go. Just to get a little bit of highlight. And then we're going to come in with our stem color. And you just pull that straight down like that. Okay. So that's a perspective of the frond that's straight onto you, and you're below it looking up at it, and you're seeing it tip over. Now, once this dries, you could even shade behind that so that it helps it become more visible in the front. Okay. All right, so now let's look at how to stroke a fan shaped palm frond. Okay, so those are not that difficult. It's just a similar stroke to what we just did. Now this type of frond that I just showed you would work on the date palm. The Bismarck palm is going to be more on these two. Okay, so the what was that trunk? I lost it now. So we have the Bismarck palm and Chinese fan palm. Okay, so what you want to do with these, I'm going to come back to a 12 flat. Oh, I'm making a mess here. And I'm going to show you how to get that sable palm color. Now, remember I said this greenscape would be best for that color. What I would do is load my 12 flat with greenscape on both sides, come over here next to my white, and side stroke some white. Okay. And because we can't get greenscape anymore, I want to share with you how to handle that. So create that color yourself. Okay. So these fronds would be coming out of this palm right now. It's not going to look real pretty when you're first doing the back ones, but what you're going to want to make sure you do is do some front ones where it's hanging forward, and that's like what I just showed you. So at the end of each of these stems, you're going to create a palm fan shape. Okay, so it comes out from the center and you're going to just radiate out and it's going to get shorter as it comes around to that side. So they're just chisel edge strokes, and then from this side they're going to get longer coming out to that first center stroke that we did. Okay, so I'm hoping that's making sense to you. All right, so let's look at the fan itself. So if you've got a fan where the center is here and it comes all the way back to here and to here. Okay, so you're going to push and lift, push and lift, push and lift to get that fan shape. So it's like the opposite of doing a daisy. This is called the Bismarck palm. I love these colored palms. Their palms are really, the fronds are so thick and massive. I love them until one falls on my head. I hope that never happens. Okay, so that's what their main palm looks like, frond. And then the stem comes from here. Okay, so that's what I'm creating here. So you would do a bunch of these. Now you wouldn't do them all flat like that. So you might have some where they're falling over like this. And that's going to cover the top of your trunk. And just like I showed you up above there, right, that's going to be kind of folding over. And all you're needing to do for the stem is just a little pull right in there. And you might want to do it with the white so it shows. There we go. Okay, so you would just repeat and add different views. Maybe you have a half view because you're only seeing one side of it. So maybe you have some of these on the back side are pulled out this way. Right, they're going to stick out a little further like this. And then you could even reverse the colors, right, where you're pulling the dark in between. See there? So you're seeing it folded in half, like you're seeing it from the side. Right, and then you would pull that stem back down. Okay, so just lots of different ways you could display these. Just be careful that you're not making them too stiff. All right, so maybe have a few of the fronds kind of flowing or even folding over on each other. See there? And this one would come over like that. And they form this big cloud of these all around the top of this trunk. So you might have some that are falling over here from the back side and so on. And then restroke this top one over that. Okay, so that's how you would build that. And yes, they are this color. So now to get this greenscape color, because it's so hard, you can't get it anymore. The plaid doesn't make it anymore. So what I suggest you do is you take some, I thought I put teal out. So maybe the aqua will work. So I'm going to take aqua and medium gray. All right, and you're going to kind of blend those together. Now you're getting very close to that color. See that? Aqua and medium gray. A touch of white. A little bit more. So you're brush mixing. This is aqua and medium gray. Pretty darn close. A little bit more gray and a little bit more white. And there you go. So that's pretty close to that color. If you don't feel it's green enough, you could add a little sap green in there. A little bit more. And then try it. That's pretty close. Right? So then we side load some white. We've got that brush mix down our brush. And that's the stroke right there. So push, push, push. When you lived in California, you had sago palms. You mean sago palms? Sago palms are the short ones with the very hard, stiff, bristly leaves on the fronds. Very similar to an evergreen. Okay, so there you go. Now, so you would do that type on top of this trunk. You would do this type up here on top of this trunk. Okay, so they would all come out. They would just be longer. Last thing I want to show you is how to do a very quick and easy coconut to put at the top of your coconut palms. Okay, so I've got a dauber here and I'm going to double load. Let me back up a bit. I'm going to double load this dauber with my two browns. I've got burnt umber and coffee latte. I'm going to come over here and get a little bit of the burnt sienna. All right, so I've got all three here. And maybe just a touch of white on, ooh, that's a lot, on my coffee latte side. Okay, so you would come right up here, depending on the size of your palm and how big you want your coconuts to be. You're going to push, turn, a quarter turn, and lift to get a very simple coconut shape, right? These are the brown husk coconuts. If you want the gold husk ones, then you would have to use like yellow ochre and burnt sienna, coffee latte, stuff like that. Okay, so you can do a little cluster of 3 coconuts and then come in with script liner, and let's get a darker color like this burnt umber and put your little dots right there. There and there. Okay, and then once you do that, then you could pull all these palm fronds from the top of that. Okay, So I hope you enjoy that. Now this is a smaller dauber. It's going to make smaller coconuts depending on the size of your tree. Okay, well that is my palm tree demo. I hope you enjoyed it. Let's take a quick look at that again here. There we go. So I showed you the different types of trunks, right? The simple one-stroke trunk and then a little bit different looking flat trunk. You can now even come in once you have these done and take a little script liner, maybe with some burnt umber, and add some detail lines right to that trunk. You can get light colors. You could even sputter it down by laying this brush on its flat side or its side, right, and sputter those down, just like we would do with like a birch tree or something, okay, where you're sputtering that color down. All right, so there you go. Thanks so much for watching that demo.